In today's episode, we're going to talk about a new revenue stream that can make you hundreds, if not thousands of extra dollars per month, but which most small channels sadly ignore. It's sponsorships.
Justin Moore is the top sponsorship coach for creators and has helped generate more than $5 million in sponsorship revenue. In this conversation, we'll cover the exact steps to take to land your first paid sponsorship, even if you have 1,000 subscribers or less, as well as some of the more advanced strategies from his brand new book, Sponsor Magnet.
So Justin, basically our first question is, how much money can small creators realistically make from sponsorships?
Lots and lots of money, big bags with dollar signs on them or pound signs on them, euro signs on them, whatever it is. Let me answer this question by sharing a quick anecdote. I would actually say the majority of my students are smaller. They have a hyper-focused audience. They have less than, let's say, 10,000 YouTube subscribers or podcast, listeners or whatever. But that's because they have a very, very specific focus. I have a coaching client. Her name is Dr. Alex. And so she has a business called Digital Pathology Place. So she's a veterinarian, a physician, right? And all of the people in her audience are doctors, lab techs, people who work at these medical device companies. And she's not getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views or downloads or listens on her posts on LinkedIn and YouTube videos and things. She's getting hundreds. And yet she's absolutely crushing it with brand partnerships, because if you're that medical device company or tooling company, where do you advertise? Right. And so I think this is, a really important place to start, which is like, I think a lot of creators, a lot of YouTubers especially, think that it's all about the views. It's all about, I'm going to reach out to the Audibles of the world and the people that they see other sponsoring these very gigantic creators. But especially if you have a very specific niche, it can be extremely lucrative.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the follow-up question there is like trying to bridge this gap where you hear somebody like you, who's obviously very experienced in this, saying that, but then I return to my desk, I return to my YouTube studio, and I see like, okay, 1,000 views in the last 48 hours or less than that in the last 48 hours. And there's still this disconnect in my head where I'm like, but what, like, how do I sell myself when I have, a relatively small audience or whatever it is? What would you say is the number one thing that a creator in that position could do to make themselves more attractive to prospective brands?
You know who you just described, George? You just described me. If I look at my YouTube studio right now, that's me. I'm not getting tens of thousands of views. And yet I have a very lucrative sponsorship revenue as part of my business, but it's because of the story that I'm able to tell when I'm on a call with a brand. This, a big part of it is like understanding what is the narrative, how can I talk to this sponsor to help them understand why my audience is different, even though it's very small? And so, what my angle is? I thought a lot about this when I was, growing the channel, which was that, okay, the creators that follow me as a sponsorship coach, they are trying to make money from their business. That is a very different type of persona of viewer or customer. This is not someone screwing around on TikTok or just trying to have fun on YouTube. They are trying to make money. They're trying to grow a business. And that is a very attractive persona of a customer to the creator economy company X software tool is trying to target customers, right? And so a lot of it is like telling this story and understanding, and what you might be thinking as you're listening or watching this is like, okay, I actually don't know much about my audience other than what I'm seeing in the YouTube, analytics with the geographics, the ages, the genders. Like I don't know much more than that. And so the exercise then is like, okay, I actually need to ask them. I need to do some, what I call psychographic research to learn more about, what's keeping them up at night. What problems do they have? Like, what types of jobs do they have? Are they married? Do they have kids? What types of brands and products and services are they using and loving right now? So you can do this on your YouTube community tab by doing polls, surveys. You can straight up put a Google form, or type form survey, link in there. If you have a newsletter, you can send it, right? So I think that there's things that you can do to learn more about this so that you can start crafting this narrative when you're talking with brands.
So let's assume I've done that. I'm a small creator. I've got a few thousand views. I've been encouraged by Justin to put out this form. I've got some information, but no brands have reached out to me. I'm not fully sure who I would reach out to. What's like the very first step that they need to take, that most people should take just to get started, even talking to brands.
So hopefully you're not just sitting in your room twiddling your thumbs, just inventing brands to pitch. Yeah, sure, microphones, perfect. This is great. They'll love me because I've used them for 3 years. This is what most creators do: is they just think, what are the brands and tools that I authentically love and use? I've been using this for 10 years. I should reach out and tell them that. Hopefully they'll give me money, right? That this is what most people do. What I'm hoping is that in the survey that you sent out, dear creator listening, is that you actually started to get some leads on the types of brands that would be good for you to actually reach out to. I think a big myth is that you have to wait for them. It's like, if I build it, they will come. When in fact, if you do this survey and you realize, wow, I actually didn't realize that 35 or 40% of the respondents of this survey, let's say you target SMBs, like small, medium-sized businesses, like that's who you're targeting with your YouTube content or your social media content. I actually didn't realize that 35% of them have brick and mortar locations. Here I thought they were like internet businesses. I did this survey and I realized, like, wow, you know what is like a really important thing for those people is having a really a great way to ensuring that they're able to reconcile their in-store inventory with their e-commerce inventory. So that they can accurately plan for buying more products and things like that. That is a very unique problem. And you know what? You start to realize, wow, like I should actually go out there and pitch, I don't know, Shopify. They have a point of store, a POS, or a Square, whatever. These tools that allow you to do this very seamlessly. And you might be realizing, like, wow, I never thought that like Shopify or Square or something is a brand that I should pitch. But I've got all these people in my audience are saying they're having issues with this thing. That is so much more of a compelling pitch when you reach out to them and be like, rather than being like, hey, I love your brand, let's collaborate. It's like, hey, I've got all these people who are having this active issue. I would love to expose my full audience to this thing. And you know what? This also is such a beautiful discovery. It's like, wow, this actually may uncover some like new content that I should be creating to serve this audience as well.
This is so interesting. I think it's certainly the position that I was in. Obviously we have worked together in the past, so I guess we talked about sponsorships then.
We didn't even do a PSA here. Full disclosure, George used to work for me. Dang, man.
And maybe Gwilym's done some work
all
there
these
as well,
motivations at play in the background, George. Who's
you
this
should
man
stop
on
watching.
our podcast?
This is all cursed. You can't believe what we're saying. But if I strip away, if I remove the beautiful section of my life that was working together for a year, and just imagine myself as a creator, as me, the first interaction I really had with a sponsorship was when I just got a random email that kind of landed in my inbox, and it was the first time that I guess I thought, oh, okay, this is maybe an extra revenue stream that I could consider. But it sounds like from what you're saying that you don't even have to wait for that first brand to drop into your inbox to be ready to start doing sponsorships. Would that be fair to say?
100%, dude. And in fact, that is, you're probably leaving thousands of dollars, of pounds, of euros on the table by waiting for that moment. You say, oh, I got to get to 10,000 subscribers, or I got to get to some arbitrary threshold. And in fact, maybe one brand told you that one time. Maybe you did try to reach out when you were smaller and they said, oh, we only work with creators who have this number of audience reach or whatever. And so, well, I guess that's what every brand thinks. And so I'm just going to wait until I get these emails. And of course, like it feels, let's just like be real here. Getting an email from a sponsor, from a brand who is interested in collaborating with you is a transformative moment. At least it was for me and a lot of the creators that I work with, because it's kind of like a flex a bit, right? Maybe you've had all these people in your life, your friends, your family, were like, hey, how's that YouTube thing going? You still doing that YouTube thing? How's that going, right? So now you've got all these people who are slightly condescending to this path you've chosen, and you're able to be like, hey, what now? Who's the man? I got this email from this brand. They want this legit brand. They're offering to pay me money. What now? Right over the dinner table at the next holiday gathering or whatever. That's a transformative moment. And so I understand the trepidation that a lot of creators have at this moment, because they don't want to screw it up. They don't want to scare the brand off by charging too much. But I think it's a really important point you bring up, which is that a pitch is not just when you reach out to a brand and hey, let's collaborate. When a brand reaches out to you, you also have to pitch them. Because what I think a lot of creators don't realize is that they didn't just reach out to you in all likelihood. They probably reached out to 20 creators. and they're kind of kicking the tires on everyone to try to say, okay, well, how much do these people charge? Like, is this good? Are they interested? Is this going to be a good fit? And so there is a lot that you have to do, even if they're reaching out to you to convince them that you're the right person for the job.
First question: if no one has reached out to me yet, I'm just sat there. So I've made a list of people. I assume I've emailed them. Is that how the interaction begins if no one has gotten in touch?
Yeah. So if no one's gotten in touch, again, we go back to the survey. Hopefully we've got some data. We've got some leads of, a short list of types of companies or brands that we could potentially target. And so when you put together, this strategy to actually reach out and pitch a brand, there's two major important components. It's what do you say and who do you send it to? Both are equally important. Let's go first principles here, right? What do you say? I think that's what paralyzes a lot of people, out the gates. So what you should not do is slide in their DMs and be like, I love your brand. I've been using it for 3 years. Want to collaborate? I don't know why. My voice always breaks when I do the bad pitches because that's how I sound when I was the prepubescent Justin trying to actually pitch a brand. Well, no, maybe not that young. But imagine you're the brand on the other side of that message. What do you think is going to happen when they receive that? It's going to be this type of thing. Right? You didn't know I was going to break out the sound effects, did you? But you know what? I had to do it.
This podcast we just upgraded by like 100 years, man. That was amazing.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a total snore fest. They don't want to, they don't know who you are. When you say, hey, would love to find a way to collaborate, they think, wow, great, more work for me. That's what they're thinking. And so they don't respond or they delete the email. And so you have to be very strategic with what you're actually saying. And so there's something that I teach, a framework that I teach in my book, Sponsor Magnet, called the ROPE method. So ROPE. So R stands for your pitch has to be relevant to a campaign that the brand is either currently running or has run in the past. O stands for organic, meaning that you can tie your pitch back to organic content that you've already posted that illustrates that your audience has an affinity for their brand or their product. P stands for proof, so you can illustrate how you've helped other brands achieve results, or we can dig into that if you don't have any track record. E stands for easy to execute. When the brand says, "Oh yeah, sure, this is kind of interesting. What did you have in mind?" So why don't we actually do a real life case study for this podcast? How does that sound? Tell me a dream brand.
That sounds so good. I was hoping you would say this, man. Like we saw when we all bumped into each other at Bid Summit, I saw your talk where you were doing something like this. And I was kind of nervous going into it because I was like, surely of the like 4 or 5 people that would raise their hand and hope that you would do this for them, I thought there's going to be a roadblock on one of these. There's going to be like problems. It's going to, it's all live. It's all kind of improvised. But every single one, you'd found their perfect pitch within like 2 minutes. So not to add pressure to the situation, but I'm excited.
High stakes now. All right. So what I'd like you to do is just throw out like, 2 or 3 brands that, let's say you did the survey of your audience. You asked them, hey, click in the show notes, click the Google, form. Let us know more about you. We get a short list back. Give me your best like assumption of what you think that survey would look like, and what are the types of brands you think you'd love to collaborate with?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is there is a list of companies that many of which could be definitely match our audience, but there are conflicts in terms of we're not sure about how they operate, or how is it going to reflect on us in the future. Definitely, I think one thing that would very much match what we use and what our audience uses is say software like Notion or ClickUp or something like that a lot of creators use to manage their business. Probably payment processing things like Lemon Squeezy or Stripe.
Okay, let's go with ClickUp. Cool. I think that's going to be a great example. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, and we're going to have some fun. We ready, boys?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Make us some money.
All right. So the very first thing that I do is I'm going to pull up ClickUp's website. And I want to just do a quick evaluation of like, what does it seem like is important to them right now? What's the very first thing that we see? We see this giant banner at the top of the screen that says new chat and work in one place with AI superpowers. What is ClickUp Chat? I'm going to click on that. I don't know what it is. Okay. Here's the pitch. hey, I saw that you just, the subject line of this email is ClickUp chat plus YouTube podcast question mark, something like that, or behind the scene, whatever the podcast name that you have is, or ClickUp chat in Q2 2025 question mark. So right up front, the subject line is relevant to something that is very important that's going on in their world right now, right? ClickUp chat is what they care about, right? And so the angle here potentially is like when you open, they open this email, right? It's a great subject line is, hey, I saw that, hey name, and we'll talk about who we're sending this to in a second, but hey name, saw that you guys just launched ClickUp chat. This looks amazing. We actually, whoever's sending the email, my partner and I, we run a podcast specifically designed targeting teams, creators who have teams, and the people who are working behind the scenes of some of the largest creator companies in the world here. And we actually think ClickUp Chat is a perfect solution for everyone who listens to our podcast. In fact, take a look at this episode here where we talked about this breakdown of the top 10 tools that creator teams are using. I don't know. If you don't have that piece of content, you make that piece of content proactively. Right. Yeah. So you sit down and you brainstorm and again, this is not just like you're making the episode just to serve the sponsor. It's a helpful episode. I think that sounds like a cool episode. It's like, what's the top 10 tools that you're right? So you make that episode just amongst yourself. But it serves a double purpose. You know that you're going to be pitching ClickUp in 3 weeks. And so you post that episode, you get some great engagement, messages from listeners, et cetera. And then you send them that pitch and you tie it to that episode, right? And then you said, would love to help spread the word about ClickUp Chat in the following way. We could do, 5 podcast ad insertions. We could actually do a dynamic ad insertion where we insert a pre-roll ad over the entire back catalog of our podcast for the next 3 months. Happy to give you usage rights to actually repurpose this ad, this content as an ad for 6 months or whatever, the duration of how long you're going to be promoting this for. Happy to share some results of how we've collaborated with, other brand XYZ. Are you free on Thursday at 10 a.m. to talk about this? That is the pitch.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think what that really that illustrates to me is just the breadth of different things that you can offer to brands like this in a situation where, like, if we just reverse 10 minutes and think about, I think where a lot of people will be coming into this conversation, they would think, what I have is my podcast or my YouTube channel that gets X hundred views, and I don't know how to make this big brand listen to me. Like, why would they? And all of a sudden, like from what you're saying there, it's like you're giving them such a scope of options, like different ways they could collaborate, from anything from just like, hey, we can just do like one thing, or maybe we can spread this over a number of episodes, or to get you some extra value, we can put you in our back catalog. I think it's just like this is the mind stretching stuff that I think has always stuck with me since since I first heard about the frameworks that you have. I think that's really cool. Love it.
And one thing I really hope that this also uncovers is, how long did it take us to figure out what's important to them? It took us 7 seconds, right? Yeah. It really, and again, you're not always going to find that right away. If you go to their website, they may not have a banner or something, but there's other methodologies that I talk about, which is like, go and look at their social media. A big one is like, a lot of brands have seasonal campaigns. So maybe we went to ClickUp's Instagram, for example, and we're sitting here in January, like, I want to work with ClickUp, but you should not be pitching them like a new year, new you campaign. Like, oh yeah, get your life organized on ClickUp, for the new year, New Year's resolution. No, they planned their January campaigns 3 months ago or 6 months ago, because they're a big brand. They have to plan this stuff in advance. And so what you have to do as a creator is go back and see, hey, what were they actually doing last April or May? Because that's, in all likelihood, that's the kind of lead time that you often need to plan for as a brand to run campaigns. And so, hey, what was ClickUp posting about in April or May of last year? Maybe they were posting something about the start of Q2 or the start of spring, or some random promotion that they were doing. Who knows? But oftentimes that can be a good indication. And then what's the subject line for that email? It's, hashtag ClickUp summer in 2025? Question mark. They ran it last year. They're probably going to run it again this year.
Yeah, love that.
So we're in the place now where maybe I've got a spreadsheet. I've got lots of companies that I've gotten in touch with, maybe 10, maybe 1 or 2 have actually gotten in touch with me, and I'm thrilled about it, and I'm telling all my family. So once the fish is on the hook, so to speak, how do you
Well,
reel it in?
hold on. We're premature here. Who are we sending this to? We didn't talk about that. We need to
Good point.
know. This is
Who do we
very
send?
important. Who do we send it to? This is the other 50%. What you don't do is send it to press@brand.com or send it to their, contact form on their website. That where it goes to die. That is not the place you send it. You also don't DM them on social media because the people who are running the social media handle is almost never the decision maker for these types of collaborations. And so the most important thing here is starting to familiarize yourself with who is on their marketing team using tools like LinkedIn, like a networking platform where you can start Googling around and say, okay, who's actually working in marketing on their organization? There's this magic search query that I talk about in the book where it's basically brand name, the title, like influencer marketing manager, and then LinkedIn. And you type this into something like Google, right? And it's a very easy way to start clicking on profiles and just be like, okay, who does it seem like is responsible for this? And the amount of stuff you can learn just from people, what they post on their own LinkedIn profiles of like, I am the person who runs the influencer marketing program, or I am the person who, handles XYZ, or I'm the manager of a team of 3, influencer coordinators. Like people will say this stuff in their profiles. And so a lot of what I do is I, just kind of when I'm teaching people, I'm doing this stuff in real time is I'm clicking 10 profiles open. I'm just like opening a bunch of tabs. And then I just kind of start reading through and seeing like, you can also learn a lot from like what types of jobs did they have before at previous companies. So maybe they don't list much stuff right now about their current role at the company, but in their last job, it said, I ran the influencer program. I did this. So it's a fairly safe inference that they're also doing those things in their current role. So there's all these kind of little methods that I've learned over the years to kind of start educating yourself around like, who is the exact right person to send this to? Because your chances of getting a response skyrocket when you send it to the right person.
So we know what we're sending and who we're sending it to. And assuming we got some leads, what's the next step? There's some interest and then there is a pricing conversation, I assume.
There is. So step 2 in my book Sponsor Magnet is negotiate. And this is really the step that scares a lot of people because they don't know how to value what they're bringing to the table oftentimes. What you should not do is DM your friend and be like, hey, how much do you charge for sponsorships? Which is what I call competitive pricing, which is not good because your friend probably also DM'd someone who didn't know what they were doing. And now it's just garbage in, garbage out. You're probably leaving a lot of money on the table. And so a better step at this point is hopefully getting on a phone call with the brand, is saying, hey, sounds like you're interested. Great. I would love to hop on a phone call and learn, just have a conversation, learn more about, ask if it's okay, ask some more questions to kind of qualify this engagement. And I know there's a lot of people listening to this or watching this thinking that sounds terrifying. I've never gotten on a phone call with a brand. There's no way. I'm an introvert. This is why I make YouTube videos. What are you talking about, Justin? I don't want to do this. And let me wrap you in a warm blanket or a weighted blanket. How about just ask questions, do some research before the call, and ask them, what's on the product roadmap? What are you guys excited about for the next 6 months? Tell me about, like, are you having challenges that weren't present a year ago? Why is that? Have you ever worked with creators before? If you have, like, did it go well? If it didn't go so well, why was that? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about your experience working with creators. You just ask these questions and then, stuff specific to their industry, whatever. And then what's going to happen almost always is that at the end of that conversation, the brand will say, great. So like, yeah, how do we get started? Like, give me like a ballpark, like roughly how much do you charge? It's going to something like that usually. And so instead of stammering and, being backed into a corner and just like 1,000, you just like cough up a number and then you cry later in the shower. Not that I've ever done that. You say something very specific, almost verbatim. Okay. So get your pen out. Ready? You say, hey, this conversation was so fantastic. What I'd love to do is actually, I need a little bit of time to think about this, and I'd love to put together a proposal, customized proposal for you, brand. Usually what I do is I put together 3 to 4 packages to give you a sense of how we could bring this partnership to life. Do you have a sense of what I should set those 3 to 4 tiers at from a budget feasibility perspective? This is very different than asking, what is your budget? Because when you ask what's your budget, they either don't want to tell you, they stonewall, or they're going to say, if they say 10K, what's your proposal going to be for? 10K, right? And then they have no wiggle room. Remember, they're probably talking with lots of different people. And so what I ran an influencer work in the agency for about 7 years. We didn't really even mention that much, but like what oftentimes happens is that our clients, who are the brands, would give us this big budget. They would say, here's 100K. Go run this campaign for us. And so our job would be to essentially Tetris the budget together of all the different creators we were working with, because everyone charges different amounts. So we had the 100K and we had to kind of figure out how to fit the puzzle pieces together. And so oftentimes we had to pass on other creators because we couldn't meet their rate. And so your job as a creator is to give them some option to move forward with you at various different levels. And so it feels shocking to hear this, but 75% of the time when you ask brands that very simple phrasing about the budget range, they will tell you. They'll tell you the range. They'll say 1, 2, 3K or 5, 10, 15K or 100, 200, $300 or whatever. So not only will you like get a good assessment of like how much time you should spend on this proposal probably, but the 25% of the time when they still will say, oh, we don't know. You tell us, we've never done this before. What I say is that package 1, when you come back with your proposal, because you still send them packages, is what I call your hell yeah number. Meaning like if they pick package 1, which is like the lowest amount, you say, hell yeah, let's go. I'm excited. Let's do this. Not, oh, I got to do this now. I was hoping they'd pick package 3. You never want to resent it at the outset of the partnership. And so again, I understand maybe this doesn't feel super satisfying or it's not super scientific. But at the end of the day, you have to feel excited and enthused. And that hell yeah number is going to be different for everyone.
I love that. I think I'd like to almost take a pause at this point and just take stock of where we're at, because I think one thing that's coming up in my mind, we've talked a lot so far about these incredible kind of beginner tips almost. Like all of this stuff feels like you could apply it very, very quickly and make a meaningful difference to your approach. But what I am taking from this is more than no work, right? This is not something that you can just kind of do without giving at least a little bit more thought to it. And so I suppose what I'm curious about, and I think maybe an objection that a lot of people would have to sponsorships in general is like, if I'm spending my time like thinking about all of this stuff, what is the trade-off for other things that are going on in my business? Am I going to be now spending less time thinking about, for example, scripting my YouTube video, which is also a very valuable time consuming thing.
Critical.
Yeah. Or whatever else it might be, right? It might be the marketing for my own digital products or my course, or upgrading my community experience for my students. I suppose what I'm curious to hear from you is like, how do you square that in your mind? Like where should sponsorships be in terms of that priority list, considering you do need to put a bit of time and thought into them if they're to be effective?
I'm going to say something that's probably going to piss off a lot of people, which is that the myth of the creative genius who can spend their entire day just thinking about their craft, just thinking about the creativity, just thinking about the content. And you know what? I'm just going to, delegate this. I'm going to hire someone to, figure out the business stuff for me. It's a myth. 99.9% of creators do not have this luxury. You have to be allocating more than 0.1% of your time to figuring out how you can have the stamina to continue to make great art. And the way to do that is understand the economic, financial underpinning of your business. And so allocating, a non-trivial percentage of your time to figuring this stuff out, especially if sponsorships play a significant role in your business as a creator. You got to be allocating a lot of time to this. You can't just be allocating 5% of your time, or at worst, 0%. You're just waiting for brands to reach out to you. Look, dude, okay, let me share. I think this is a really important point, which is that there's this thing that I've been turning over in my mind recently. I'm actually writing a keynote for this. I just got accepted for a keynote at a very large creator conference talking about this. So let's workshop this a bit. But it's this. I'm calling it the collaboration paradox. The subtitle is Why We Create Together but Monetize Alone. And I think that there's this really interesting phenomenon where, as creators, the idea of soliciting feedback from our peers to make our art better, our craft better, is a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, I'm going to ask for feedback on the thumbnail. I'm going to ask for feedback on the first 30 seconds of this to increase retention. I'm going to ask for feedback on the script. I'm going to ask for feedback on all this stuff from all my friends who I trust. But when it comes to making money, when it comes to doing sponsorships, when it comes to doing all these things, somehow I feel like I have to do this alone. I can't ask for advice. I can't talk to people. I can't collaborate with someone to help bring my creative vision to life. I got collaborate with a company or a brand. And I just think that it is a travesty, in my opinion. And I think that shifting, what I'm hoping to do through this talk that I'm going to create, is shifting people's perspectives and helping them understand that, like, collaborations, especially sponsorships and partnerships, can be the way in which you're able to have the impact, the creative impact that you want to have on a long time span.
A section of people feel like sponsorships are inherently icky and not nice. And the way we are trying to approach them on this podcast is working with people who it feels like a no-brainer, like we would want our audience to know about it. And on the flip side, what it gives us is this feeling of almost like, for us at this beginner level, this podcast pays for itself. It's a no-brainer. We get to meet up and have conversations for free. There is no cost involved because we're kind of being paid back by the sponsorship, and it's people we love and we like talking to them. We've had several really nice chats with potential sponsors and sponsors who have said, we love this about your podcasts. We think we could do this and that. And it feels nice and warm and bubbly inside. That's how we want to continue. But I'm assuming you get pushback from people who say something that sounds very different.
I think the big missing piece for a lot of creators is they are not saying that exact thing that you just said to their audience. They're not saying, hey, I'm so thrilled to collaborate with this brand during the actual integration. I'm so thrilled to collaborate with this brand for the following reason, XYZ, insert plug. And the end, you say, and I want to thank you, viewer, listener, because, honestly, for understanding that when I collaborate with sponsors, that allows me to continue to bring you great free content on a consistent basis. So thank you. Thank you for allowing and understanding that. I think not enough creators are closing that loop and helping people understand, it's not just about lining your pockets. It's about not just surviving and scraping by. It's actually okay to thrive. Like, hey, is it so bad? Like, pay your rent or your mortgage with this sponsorship? No, that's actually take a vacation. No, that's actually, I think, an awesome thing. And so I think a level of transparency I think is important. And a lot of creators build up this narrative in their minds that it's just like in the cultural zeitgeist, everyone hates sponsors. Everyone skips the ads on YouTube. Like, we're building Chrome extensions to automatically skip it. Like, God, I hate it. Everyone, let's just skip it. And so you have to figure out what is the version of sponsorships that feel good to you. That's an individual decision for everyone. For me, I could just be honest. I get so excited and stoked about helping improve the lives of my audience. And I think not enough people think about sponsorships from that lens. A lot of people think I have this framework that I call audience first offers. It's called your products, your sponsors, and your alliances. A lot of people, they feel comfortable selling products directly because they know it's going to solve a problem. Your screenwriting course, for example, George, you feel good about that because if people go through that, they're going to learn something, they're going to write better scripts, et cetera, right? And so that feels okay. But then somehow when we shift into the sponsors realm, it's I'm lining my pockets. There's no conversation of wow, actually, if I introduce my audience to this sponsor, and hopefully you feel good about this because the survey you did, you feel, wow, this is awesome. I'm solving this problem that they have. So there's no ickiness, right? And then that last bucket of alliances. This is actually a huge opportunity, I think, for creators, and they don't think about it, which is hey, if my audience has a problem and I'm not really able to solve this with products that I'm going to create or courses that I'm going to create or whatever, and I don't really know of a sponsor that could really solve this problem, but my friend teaches a course about this, or my friend is a coach to help with this type of thing. Maybe going back to that small business example, I have a friend who's a coach who helps people with HR issues that they're having in their store, managerial issues. I better figure out some sort of deal with my friend and put his offer in front of my audience. So I think you really have to be thinking about this trifecta as a creator. And I think the ickiness factor goes away.
I think that's really cool. And actually, what I really find so so impressive and so interesting about your approach to this is just there are so many more opportunities to create sponsorship seemingly out of thin air than people probably think. So what is an example of like a really creative sponsorship that you've been a part of or that you've heard about?
One of my favorite examples is actually recently. One of my longest running coaching clients, his name is Paul Jameson. He runs a podcast called the Green Industry Podcast. Get this. He teaches lawn care professionals how to grow his business. He's getting 150,000 downloads a month on his podcast, guys. Okay. So talk about niche, right? But again, like, look, his audience, they're on their mowers for 8 hours a day and they're listening to him in their ears. So he's built up this tremendous affinity with these people who have lawn care businesses all over the country and world. And a couple months ago, he did one of his largest partnerships ever, not on social media yet. He did this partnership was with John Deere, the largest tractor company in the world. And you know what they wanted him to do for them? They wanted Paul to attend the largest trade show of the year in their industry and sit in their booth for 3 days recording podcasts with his friends, with people on the marketing team at John Deere. It was just a steady stream. This is the most important trade show of the year for them. All the press is there, all the photographers, all the video people, and they want Paul, who is the leading voice in his industry, in their booth with their logo, with their branding behind him, everyone taking photos. That was what was important to them. And he forged the most lucrative partnership of his life to be in their booth for 3 days. And of course, he created lots of content and podcasts and short form content and all this stuff too. But that the most important thing for them at that time was the event. And so I think that they were willing, they were splashing so much cash for this event. I don't know. So I used to be in medical devices. I don't know if you know how much brands spend on trade shows. It is obscene. It is obscene. And so I think you can pull these really interesting anecdotes from like how brands are accustomed to spending money. And so when you as a little creator are like nervous to like ask for $1,000 for a sponsorship or something, some brands are spending $1 million on trade shows. Like the big brands are spending $1 million on that's the largest trade show of the year with the booth and flying their entire 50-person team out and like, wining and dining all the key opinion leaders. And like, it's crazy. And so, again, a lot of this comes down to this mindset of creativity when it comes to pitching and negotiating with the brand is just like understand what's important to them. It may not just be about doing an integration, a 30-second, 60-second integration on your YouTube channel. Maybe they want to fly you out to their headquarters and do, I don't know, some training with their internal sales team or I don't know. But it's because of what you represent. It's because of the business and the what you represent in the industry. So I think again, if you take anything from this conversation, it's this idea of creativity and just flexibility. And even if what you pitch them using the rope method earlier, in all likelihood, they're going to be like, yeah, this is cool. Thanks. Love your initiative here. This is not really important to us right now, but this other thing is actually important to us. Would you be interested in that instead? So it's this idea about being able to just pivot and focus on what is important to them.
I think what I take from that and a lot of what you've said is just really imagining the human beings behind the brand logos, not just in the fact that we're trying to like literally root them out on LinkedIn or whatever it is, but that kind of thing, that the fact that you open yourself up to something where they may not want exactly what you've come to them with, but they as human beings will appreciate the initiative. That will just like move you up in their brain slightly in terms of who they remember next time they come to needing somebody or, like anything like that. I just remembering that there's people on the other end. I think that's and like you were saying earlier, asking questions. You're not there necessarily like in this kind of standoff where you're like, you've got money and I want your money, as the influencer. And they're like, you've got an audience, I want your audience, them as the brand. It's kind of just like, hey, we're just two people. Me as the influencer, I want to understand more about your business. I want to learn how I can help you. And then them as the brand, right? Like you're someone who's got an audience. We would love to help your audience with our product. And I think reframing it from like not a battleground, but into this kind of collaborative thing. That's kind of, what's really kind of stood out to me in this conversation.
Let me give you a visual reframe of what you just described, which is that what most creators think of negotiations is like you are on either side of a table in a conference room. You're like on either side. You're like, yes, you got your elbows on the table and you're staring at each other's eyes. And it's like, there's a lot of animosity. You're both sitting in these swivel chairs. So you know what a negotiation is actually like? You take your little swivel office chair and you go around to the other side of the table, and you're both sitting on the same side. And there's a whiteboard right there. You're both looking at the whiteboard and you're like, okay, the brand says, here's where we are. They point to the starting point right here. And the brand says, here's where we want to go. Let's work together to make that happen. That's what a negotiation should feel like to you.
Love that. That's so good. I think big takeaway from that. Thank you.
Justin, I want to mine your brain as someone who's spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of creators and their teams. So people who are starting off small, they will generally be negotiating things themselves. Once you get up to a few 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, say, there starts to become this conversation of my time as a creator is super valuable, spent doing the creating, like we touched on before. What are the different setups that you see people have in terms of having managers or someone on their team or an agency handling sponsorships for them? And what are the pros and cons of outsourcing this versus doing it yourself? Yeah. What do most people do and what do you recommend?
My answers are just pissing people left and right off. I don't know why
Get
that's happening. I guess I feel like you planned this, didn't you?
Clipped this. It's going to be a short.
So like I said earlier, I think 99.9% of creators should not hire management, should not hire representation, should not have brokers or agents. You should either do this yourself, learn how to do it yourself, or have someone who works directly for you doing it on your behalf. There's a lot of insidious dynamics that come to play when you, let's say, have a manager. They are your exclusive representative, and the only way in which they are compensated is if they're getting 20% of your deals. So there's no retainer that you're paying them. It's basically either their email address is in your bio, right? So if a brand reaches out and it's like, oh yeah, business inquiries, email this person right here. Let me share a quick example from my time running an agency. To just clarify, so when I ran an agency, I did not, my business was more like an advertising agency. I was not representing talent. I did not have an exclusive roster. My client was the brands. And so when the brands hired us to run a campaign, we then went out there on a freelance basis and offered to hire on a project per project basis creators who are a good fit for that particular campaign. So I just want to split hairs here for a second because there's a lot of confusion around the terminology. And so our company, our advertising agency, we would reach out to this person's manager. We would say, hey, this creator I think is a good fit for the campaign. We'll reach out to them and we'd say, hey, are they interested? Here's the campaign details, et cetera. And then the manager would say, yeah, I think they might be interested, but do you need more people? Because I also have a roster of 20 other people. Here's their rates. Here's their channels. What do you think? And so you can imagine an unscrupulous brand saying, oh yeah, these other 3 people are cheaper and better. Let's move forward with them instead. And I can't tell you how many times this happened. And I always thought it was super shady. But again, your manager doesn't care where their 20% comes from, whether it's from you or the 19 other people on their roster. That's how they're eating. So it's these kind of toxic incentive structures I have found oftentimes encourage bad behavior. I'm not saying every manager does this, but I've seen it enough times to know that it happens. Okay. And so that's number one. The other thing too is that imagine it's human nature, right? Imagine your manager or your rep or your broker is out there pounding the pavement for you. They're trying to get you deals. They're like, trying to convince a brand or a sponsor to collaborate with you. And then they finally do. Yes, someone's going to sponsor this person. So they email you, guess what? I'm so excited. I got you a deal. And then the creator says, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to work with that brand. And the manager is like, WTF. Like, not only is this person ungrateful, I'm not going to bring them as many deals anymore because I just busted my butt to get them this deal and they were flippant and they blew me off. And now I look like an idiot. I have to go back to the sponsor and be like, hey, I know I convinced you in this dog and pony show that this creator was excited to work with you, but sorry, they're not. So these are just, I could go on and on. We could do a whole episode about this thing. So in general, I am a big advocate of like, regardless of where you're at, there's no, like, I know you said like, oh yeah, for beginners is one thing, but if you get hundreds of thousands of subscribers, it's another thing and you should hire someone else. And I reject that notion. I have people with millions of subscribers, followers in my coaching program, and they're doing it themselves. I also have people with millions of followers, hundreds of thousands, who have a team. They have decided that, yes, I do agree that there's value in doing this myself, our company doing it ourselves, but I need help. Like you said, I'm busy. I'm doing the creative stuff, and I totally understand that. I have a team, right, who helps me with my sponsorship stuff. And so what I think is the critical thing is like developing your internal playbook of like, this is how we do sponsorship here at our company. There's this really good playbook I heard about recently. It's called Sponsor Magnet by this really handsome guy named Justin Moore. So if you need a playbook, go to sponsormagnet.com. But basically, you develop this expertise in house, and you train someone up. You create a bunch of standard operating procedures, a bunch of SOPs, a bunch of Loom videos, whatever, and you have this repository here, so you can train someone up and say, basically, you help qualify the inbound. Let's say probably at that time you do have a significant amount of inbound, so you're going to be the initial front line. You do some sort of ingestion or qualification process, and then you orchestrate some sort of handoff. This is what I recommend, is that you say, okay, you qualify it here, and then the moment that it's time to get on a call, or the moment that it's time to talk about creative ideas or whatever, I'm back in it. Let's go. I'm hopping on a Zoom call. I'm talking with you, brand. Because again, at the end of the day, the brand wants to work with you, not your manager, not your VA that's handling this stuff for you. It's you. And so put your ego in check. Sponsorships are a big part of your revenue, remember? So yeah, you can allocate 3 hours a week to getting on phone calls with brands if necessary. So again, I think, again, I just reject this notion that there's a point at which you should hire an agent or a manager. I actually think that it will be much more commonplace now. This feels like heresy to be saying this right now. And I have a lot of friends who are managers who hate me for saying this stuff, but like, I think it's going to be more the norm to be, running this yourself in 5-10 years.
What you've just reminded me of is a video that we worked on together where you were showing the literal email conversation between a much larger creator and a brand that they were potentially getting sponsored by. And the reason this came to my mind is because I think almost it becomes more imperative that you remain doing your own sponsorships. You continue to do that as you get bigger, because suddenly the numbers that you're dealing with are significantly bigger and, potentially life-changing sums of money on a regular basis. And I remember this email conversation, I think you'd anonymize the creator, but there was this brand that was basically trying to offer them like, I don't know, 60, 70K or something huge. And this creator was holding out no matter what for a 6-figure deal. And the brand was coming closer and closer. And every time this creator came back and just stood their ground and was like, I know my value, I know my worth, I know I've got this many people in my audience. Here's the value that I bring to you. It's 6 figures or nothing. And I can't remember, I think they may have bailed out of the deal in the end. But the point is, if that had been potentially a manager who was dealing with something like that, they might have suddenly thought, well, come on, this guy's going to accept like 80K, right? He's going to be thrilled if I bring him 80K. When actually we see from the creator themselves dealing with it, that they would have been happy with nothing unless it was 6 figures. So I feel like the stakes potentially get higher as you get bigger, basically.
In fact, to hammer this home, I can't tell you how many times, like when we used to early on, like we actually had some really bad experiences, like working with managers or being in networks early on in our career, which has colored a lot of my perspective here. I'll fully admit. But like there were numerous occasions where it was getting on a phone call with the brand and putting a face to the name that got it over the finish line. It was like they were just teetering on the edge, and there was like a lot of money, especially 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when like influencer marketing wasn't as common. Like this brand was like, are we really going to pay this? These creators like 30K or whatever it was going to be. And it was just like, let's just hop on a quick phone call, like hash out any of your remaining questions or clarifications or whatever. And it was just like that 15-minute Zoom call, and they're like, all right, let's move forward. Right. And so if you understand that value as a creator, like this is real. This is truly imagine if it's you and you're about to invest a bunch of money in something. You just want that warm and fuzzy hug. Like, yes, this is right. This person's not going to just like run away with my money to the Caribbean. They're going to like do what they say they're going to do. I feel good about this decision, or I feel like my butt is adequately protected internally to my client or my boss. If it goes south, I can show that I did the research. I got on the phone call. I did everything that I could do to possibly ensure that this was going to go well. Because more oftentimes than not, that's what those brand contacts are worried about.
Justin, I feel like we've scratched the surface on all the techniques and protocols and best practices. Tell us about Sponsor Magnet. I want to hear what's in the book. Why do you write it? What can people get from reading it?
Dude, I've been doing this a really long time. First YouTube channel my wife started was in 2009. So we've been, it has kind of been the family business for a long time. As I get older, this is going to sound so cheesy, but I just started feeling compelled and pulled to this idea of like creating something that felt like a legacy for the next generation, like educating the next generation so that they cannot make the same mistakes that we did. Cause we literally made every mistake in the book. Every mistake in the book. Oh man, I totally didn't. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. And so the idea of writing a book was very attractive because it felt like the most succinct distillation, the most succinct content format that I could create to just be like, boom, here. Not like, go watch this, go click on this YouTube video and watch it, or go join my newsletter and I'll send you, I thought for a long time that was like, that's the way to educate people. And it's great. It's free value and all that stuff too. But as you mentioned earlier, you were mentioning a lot of these objections. Yeah, but Justin, what about this? But what if I'm a creator who thinks this and this type of thing? And you know what? I really love and appreciate you guys for that, because that's the majority of creators. The vast, vast majority of creators have a lot of these hangups when it comes to sponsorships. And so I felt as though writing a book was the most accessible, 15, 20 bucks, whatever. Grab this. Here's everything I know about brand partnerships. That felt like the best way to have the biggest impact possible. And it's a thesis. It's a theory. I don't know if that's if this was the right thing to do to spend, a year doing. I feel like it is. And I gotta go. I've gone with my gut with, over the last several years building this business. And so it feels like it was the right decision. And so honestly, if you are someone who's listening or watching to this, who still feels like you're on the fence, or maybe you are making some significant income with sponsorships, I guarantee you that this book will make you more money. And if it doesn't, I'll refund you. I guarantee you, I have no doubt in my mind. I have put every secret sauce, special hacked script template that you can fricking imagine into this book. And I'm very proud of it. And so I'm going to be very annoying and very loud about it for the next, couple of years, because I do think it's going to be transformative for people.
Amazing. Quite right too. And where can people and when can people get hold of this beautiful manuscript that is Justin's brain in a book?
Yeah, well, again, we didn't do the full disclosure either too, which is that I actually hired George to edit the book and make it funnier. So talk about burying the lead until the very end. But
there's only about 4 people here now. Don't worry.
Like George switched teams. Yeah. It's just me.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, you can get it at sponsormagnet.com. It is available starting January 21st, 2025. Or, wherever what do they say? Or wherever you buy your books, or wherever you listen to your podcast players, or I don't remember what they say. But yeah, it should be available pretty much everywhere. If you want it in your local library, I actually think you can go in and request it. I think that's a thing. You might be able to do that as well. But yeah, audiobook coming April, May, around there, something like that. Yeah, I appreciate you, gents. This has been a great conversation. I love what you guys are doing. You're shining a light on such important people and things that are, not very often discussed in the creator economy. So appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And congrats on the launch. I really hope it goes well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.